Thanks for checking out our podcast. If you are interested in learning more about writing, go check out our syndication page, seriouswriter.com, where you can find resources, articles, videos, topical classes, and the Brew and Ink podcast. Again, seriouswriter.com. We thank you for listening.
All right, welcome back to an Interbrews. This is Brew and Ink.
Welcome back, everyone.
And it's Steven and I.
Yeah.
And we decided to do an episode where we did a spoiler-filled review of a movie that everyone has seen. If you haven't seen this movie,
you're 40 years behind.
Then please watch it at some point. You know, I still know a few people in my life, maybe that I've met here and there.
Yeah.
Who are like, I don't really watch Star Wars, but most people have seen the Star Wars movies, the original three at least.
Yeah.
Especially the first Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then there was Empire Strikes Back, episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Return of the Jedi, episode 6. And it is the 40th year anniversary of Empire Strikes Back coming out in the theater.
Yes, theatrical release.
It came out in 1980.
Yes.
And I was 7 years old. So if you do math.
Yes.
Or even if you don't do math, you should at least be able to add a little bit, right?
And I was -3.
Yeah, you were -3.
Yes. The first movie I saw in theaters was Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah?
And I was like, I think a few months.
Oh, right?
But you mentioned about people who haven't seen it yet. I've had 2 people in my life that I got them to watch the Star Wars saga.
Oh, wow.
You know, for the first time.
Sure.
And one of them we did an experiment on.
Okay.
And we made him watch it from episode 1 through episode 6, because there wasn't 7, 8, and 9 at that point.
Yeah, sure.
But, you know, it was kind of one of those things like, how does that play out? Because then it really becomes more about Anakin's storyline.
Right.
And all that. And you don't get the big reveal in Empire, but...
Right.
You know, it's kind of like, oh, how does that come
it kind of does ruin that moment.
Yeah.
You know, a little backstory on Empire Strikes Back for me.
Yes.
I was 7 when I watched it in the theater, and I didn't see Star Wars when it came out. Like, I don't think, you know, I was 4 at the time when Star Wars came out. So I don't think I went to, if I did, I don't remember. But I do remember at some point going to the theater and watching Star Wars, because back then, I'm going to sound really old right now, because back in the olden days, they didn't even have videos. They didn't have VHS or beta. They didn't have like videos. So if it didn't come on TV, the only way to watch a movie is if they would put it back out in theaters. And there were some movies that were so good and popular that they, instead of putting it on DVD like they do now, they would just re-release it in a year.
Yep.
And like Gone with the Wind would come out every few years, like into the 60s or something. And like it's like these movies would come out, and they would put them back out because, you know, if they were really popular, people would go to see movies several times over and over. And Star Wars was one of those that people would see over and over, 30, 40 times.
And then George Lucas has this, you know, history of making changes throughout too. So even with those re-releases where it was like, hey, it's back in theater, like he was changing little bits of dialogue here.
Well,
and
he
there.
didn't do that until the 90s.
No, he did. There was like little things with like C-3PO and different things like that.
Like even in like the 70s he would?
Yes, yeah. Because I remember there was this book. It was all like the compendium of all Star Wars releases, and I was like reading it going, I had no idea he was doing it even back then.
I got it.
But it's like smaller things. He wasn't adding CGI new characters at that point. No, that wasn't until the 90s. So why are we just focusing today on The Empire Strikes Back?
Well, like I said, it's the 40-year anniversary.
Yes.
And so we watched it. We went to go see it in the theater, Steven and I and a friend of ours, Wes Wood.
Yes.
And my 3 chillins went with us. But so when Empire Strikes Back came out, I was a huge Star Wars fan. Like, I was already like a lot of people. Like, I was not the only one. I remember for Easter, we got our first Star Wars figures.
Yeah.
I got C-3PO, and my brother Derek got Chewbacca.
Nice.
And we thought we were the coolest kids on the block, even though I was like, I would rather have like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker or something, you know.
Those were the only ones they could find.
Right? That was the only ones my mom could find at the store at the time. But, you know, we started getting the figures, and we would like, you know, we've seen the movie a couple times, and I was so into Star Wars. So when Empire Strikes Back came out, man, I went full in. I was like, this is my reason for living.
Yeah.
Like, this was the coolest thing. And a lot of people don't realize the shock that most people had in the theater at the end of Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
Like, that was the most unexpected thing that he could have possibly, maybe not possibly, but it worked with the story,
Yes.
which was amazing, but it was also so shocking.
Nobody expected
This dark movie. Like, you know, Star Wars was such a perfect adventure, space opera, fantasy, space fantasy. He kind of made his own thing.
Set up the idea, Jedis.
But like, just, and we'll get into the movie itself, but when we were in the car ride home, I was crying. I was in the back seat. I remember this vividly. It's literally, it might be the first movie I remember going to see in the theater. Like, maybe Pinocchio. There might be some other Disney movies that we saw.
Sure.
But I remember being in the back seat, like, bawling. Like, Luke Skywalker got his hand cut off.
Right.
Oh my God. Like, he was my hero. Luke Skywalker was like, every kid wanted to be Luke Skywalker and have a lightsaber.
You're like, now I got to go home and cut his hand off on my toy.
And you're just freaking out. And my dad turned, I still remember this. He's driving the car, and he takes the sleeve of his shirt.
Yeah.
And he pulls it over his hand so it looks like he doesn't have a hand.
Yeah.
And he goes, look, this is all they did. It's all pretend.
He's like, it's not real.
Like, he didn't actually lose his hand. Like, all they did was they pretended like he lost his hand. And so, that is actually like a key moment for me in my life, because at that point I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, that's not real.
Right.
Like, it's not a real thing.
You started thinking and realizing, wait, there is a way that they make these movies.
Right.
They're not actually doing these things.
And so for me, The Empire Strikes Back has a lot of nostalgia in that sense. And then, of course, you know, I remember, like, when Return of the Jedi came out and people were freaking out. They were so ready for Return of the Jedi.
Right.
And they were like, what's going to happen? Darth Vader's his dad.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? And blah, 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 blah. What's going to happen with Han Solo? Like the fact that he left it with a cliffhanger was so amazing for its time. And it was so unique and so amazing that I just don't know that it could ever happen. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched those YouTubes where they compile, like, parents showing their little kids Star Wars for the first time.
I haven't.
It's like, you got to look up these YouTubes because they're hilarious. Because these are like little kids and they're seeing Star Wars for the first time.
Yeah.
And their parents show them Star Wars, and then they show them Empire Strikes Back all the way up to, no, I am your father. And he cuts his hand off. And these kids are freaking out. And I'm like, yes, we were all freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, it
holds true over the generations, over the time.
We would argue, like, as kids, you're like, no, he's not really his dad. Like, no, he is. That's why they had to put that scene in Return of the Jedi where Luke asks Yoda, is he really my father?
Right, because they had to reinforce it, like, yo, this is
because,
for real.
Like, we didn't believe, like, well, he's lying.
It was debated. Yeah.
Like, we debated it as, you know, in the first grade. And this was like, we're gonna come to blows over this guy. We're gonna fight because no, he can't be. No, he is. He really is.
Yeah.
And so it was so huge, and I don't know that it could ever happen that way again, because back then, you would go to the movie theater and there were 2 theaters in the movie theater. Like there wasn't the overabundance of streaming, and like, now you go to the theater and there are 15, 18, 25, 35 theaters.
People weren't even used to that kind of quality of it wasn't even CGI. It was special effects still
Special
then.
effects
But it was special
on
effects
another
on a
level.
new level.
It was on, and Empire just took it to a whole nother level. So you know, when I saw on Facebook, like I saw from one of the Star Wars groups or whatever that I follow, that it's going to come into the theater. You can go see Empire Strikes Back in the theater for the 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
I was freaking out and I shared it. And first I asked my kids, I'm like, I want to go. Does anyone want to go? And my kids at first were like, this is funny because my kids are like, Dad, we have it on DVD.
Right.
We have it on Blu-ray.
Right.
We have Disney Plus and it's on Disney Plus.
Yep.
Like, we've seen it a lot. And I said, it's the 40th anniversary. That's why I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And they went, yeah, let's go. Like, I don't know why that was all they had to convince them to.
Right.
And then Steven jumped on and with our friend Wes.
So, side story, I was at Wes's house that morning, and the last time I had been to his house, I had showed up with a Kylo Ren shirt on, and he had like an X-wing shirt on or something like that, and we were basically wearing the same outfit, just kind of reverse size. And so this day, I showed up. I had the Millennium Falcon, like the shirt that shows the schematics of the Millennium Falcon. He was wearing the AT-AT schematics.
Schematics, yeah.
And so then we see your posts, and I'm like, Wes, dude, we should do this. You want to go? And
he's
like,
even wearing the AT-AT.
Yes,
shirt.
Yeah. And so we took a picture of that. We're like, Britt, we're in.
Yeah.
We're like, we're already dressed for the occasion.
So we went on Friday night, and they were showing it for a few days because I had friends who went on Thursday night and they went on Saturday. But as we watched it, it was really fun, and it was one of those movies that we've seen so many times. You're just kind of being reminded, like. And my son Micah, who's 15 now, and Steven were over there doing like an MST3K, kind of making little cracks throughout the whole thing.
If we weren't quoting the lines, we were making little wisecracks.
It was really fun. It was a fun night.
Like even down to singing along with John Williams' masterful scores.
Yeah. I was over there and I leaned into Wes. I said, "Is that my son singing along to Star Wars?" And he goes, "Yeah." Which reminds me, by the way. Do you ever see the Saturday Night Live skit where Bill Murray is like the karaoke? He's like the lounge singer.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that one.
Have you ever seen those where he's a lounge singer?
I don't think so.
It is. They are some of the funniest. Of the funniest things from like the first couple of years of Saturday Night Live. So he's always like singing pop songs like a lounge singer, and he's just he's Bill Murray, and he's genius.
Yeah.
And at one point. He's going, Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. And he's like doing Star Wars like a lounge singer. It is the funniest thing. But all that to say is, so we had a lot of fun. But Steven and I both had the same idea separately. And then we were talking about it tonight. Like, we should do an Interbrews just on The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Because if you don't feel that Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie, then you're just wrong. Because...
Stated.
Is the best movie, and we're going to talk about why tonight.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Empire Strikes Back would not exist without A New Hope.
Right.
Like, it would not exist.
Set it up.
A New Hope is a great movie on its own. And if no other movie had ever been made in the Star Wars universe, it would have been sad, but it's a great movie.
Yeah.
But Empire Strikes Back, writing, the script, the direction, the acting,
the pacing.
Oh
man,
the escalation.
Yes,
the little.
I just kept thinking it while I was watching it for the umpteenth time.
Right.
But I was like, man, each scene like bleeds into the next in a level where it just makes sense, but also it keeps pushing the progression of the characters and the progression of the story forward, but forward and escalated. I was like, man, this is brilliant.
So let's go over some goals in Empire Strikes Back, because we just did an episode with the story where we talked about complexity versus complication.
Yes.
And if there's any movies, especially Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and to some degree Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But if there are any two movies where you can say the storyline is so simple, but you get so personally involved in the story, that these movies, the goals are simple, and yet they're so interconnected and work and come to this fruition at the end of the movie that it's borderline genius. We all know how hard it is to make a great sequel.
Exactly.
Like, because
not a lot of movies do it well.
Very few, if any, have ever outdone themselves with the sequel. And George Lucas, to give the guy some credit, because he gets a lot of
flack now.
He gets a lot of flack, and to some degree, that's valid for the prequels. But for that time period, the stuff that he did was so unique and so outside the box that he came back with Empire Strikes Back. He could have farted anything out of his butthole
after that,
and it would have made $1 bazillion. But he said no because it was a love thing. He wanted to make a trilogy, and he knew that he wanted to tell a story and give characters arcs that went all through all three movies. And so he went deeper, as we talked about complexity. He went deeper with every character. He went deeper with every relationship. He went deeper into the goals. So let's talk about the goals first, because this podcast is for writers.
Right.
And so as writers, I think we should look at what are the simple goals for every main character.
Yes. And is that goal what's driving the story forward, or is it getting too complicated?
Well, we can already tell you it's not complicated because it's a perfect movie. But let's get into what is Luke Skywalker's goal in the whole movie? To become
a Jedi.
A Jedi
Master.
Period. He wants to become a Jedi. He gets hit by the creature. Which is an interesting story. If you haven't heard that story, that wasn't the original beginning of the movie.
Right. He had actually had an accident prior to filming.
Mark Hamill, the actor, had an accident, and it changed the way he looked.
He had scars on his face.
And he was they had to do plastic surgery on his face, so he looked different. So they had to come up with a reason. They had wrote this whole beginning.
Write it in.
But in that whole part of the beginning, Obi-Wan Kenobi shows up and says, you need to go to Dagobah and learn to be a Jedi. It's time. And, of course, none of us knew that there was another Jedi somewhere that he could learn from, because
Obi-Wan was the only one in the last movie.
They Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first movie. And so we were like, oh, my God, that's the coolest thing ever. So that's his goal. And then Han Solo has a goal.
He states it right off the bat. He's like, look, there's a bounty on my head, and I need to go take care of this. I just got this money. I need to focus on this now. This is what I need to do if I'm going to be any help to you guys.
It caught up to me on Ord Mandel or whatever it is, right? It caught up to me here. And we almost went down, and I need to take care of this.
But then for him, his goal gets complex because while they're on Hoth, the rebel base gets discovered, and so now they have to make this really quick evacuation, and he gets caught in the middle of basically trying to rescue the princess, get her to where she needs to go.
Basically, it's primal.
It's primal.
It's survival.
Yes.
Like for Luke, it's purpose.
Yes.
And again, it's the same character that he was in the beginning of Star Wars. I just want to go to the academy. I just want to, he's trying to get out. He's trying to have adventure. He's trying to, and they deal with that complexity in Empire Strikes Back when he finally meets Yoda. But that's his goal. But Darth Vader also has a goal.
Yes.
And they deal with that in the first few minutes of the movie, where he deals with the Emperor, and the Emperor says there's another Skywalker.
Yes.
And he goes, well, how can that be? And it's the son of Skywalker. And he says, well, what if we could turn him?
Right.
What if we don't kill him? What if we could turn him? So he's after Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
And this is the setup for the whole movie. And if you look at every scene has these goals.
Yeah.
because Darth Vader's not going to give up until he gets these guys. He's even
Right.
going to hire bounty hunters. He's even going to bring when we were kids, we just thought it was cool they had bounty hunters.
Right.
But now that I'm a writer, I'm like, oh my God, like everything that Darth Vader chooses to do.
Yeah, he's going outside of what just his normal, usual, like what he's gonna go to do. Like he's got all these stormtroopers. He's got all these people within the Empire, but no, he's even pulling from outside. Like these are people that can do something in a different way than what I can do.
And he's being more violent in his punishment.
He kills off
Like
3-4 people.
And we kind of see that a little bit in Star Wars, because when he gets a little pissed off at the dude, he's like, oh, you don't think the Force is real?
Right.
Let me show you the Force is real.
Yeah.
And, but then in Empire Strikes Back, like the guy failed him too many times. He's like, all right, you're out. You're the new,
You have failed me for the last time. Yes.
And then the guy went to go apologize. And, that's one of my favorite lines.
Apology accepted.
But again, like, and then and when you're a kid, at least when I was a kid, you think, oh well, he's the bad guy, and he's chasing the good guys. He wants to kill the good guys.
Yeah.
Like he's a bad guy. That's what bad guys do. But when you look at the complexity of the story, you realize he's chasing these people, namely the Millennium Falcon and Han Solo and the princess, not because he wants them. Because it's all in line with his goal.
Yeah.
His goal is to use them as bait
Yes.
for Luke Skywalker. And so he knows that, he's not going to just get to Luke Skywalker. He's going to have to put Luke Skywalker in a compromising position. And if you know anything about the Force, because they go into it.
Yeah.
Again, he knows his goal, and again, it's all about Darth Vader. He knows his goal is to turn Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And and of course, this is the one thing that George Lucas did well, even though the acting and the directing were awful.
Uh-huh.
But what turned Anakin was his love
for Padme
and the crisis that she was in.
Right.
So he's thinking, if I put his friends, what he loves the most, if I put them in crisis, then I can turn him. I can use his hate. I can use his anger. I can use his fear.
Yes.
And I can use that. And Yoda's trying to warn him. Like it's all interconnected. They explain it so. And when you're a kid, it's just fun and cool.
Right. You're like, whoa, look at that scary scene. He went into this into the woods, into this tree, and like Darth Vader showed up, and it was his own face. What is going on? Which crazy. Like there's a decapitation scene.
And they set up this whole thing of he fights Darth Vader in the woods, in the cave, and then it's really his face. I mean, it's so deep.
Right, yes.
Like, it's really deep.
And Yoda's, like, spouting out this wisdom that, like, anyone, if you're listening and taking it to heart, you're like, dang, I should live my life more by these principles. But
it sounds funny. It's coming from a Muppet.
You're right.
Like, this is Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
Basically giving you life wisdom. And
your weapons.
And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was Frank Oz who, I don't know if he designed the whole Muppet, but he was the one who voiced
Jim Henson. It was Jim Henson's Muppets.
It was
Yeah.
And it was so unique for that time period. It was so well done. Like you look at it today and you're like, that still looks really cool.
Yes. And then even the way that they didn't just flat out come out and say, this is the Jedi Master, like they let Luke get into this situation where he's just there with R2 and they get stuck. They add complexity to the situation. He's there, but he crash lands, and his X-wing is kind of sinking into the swamp. And he's unloaded everything, and he's like, I guess this is where we're staying. I gotta find this thing. And then this creature shows up and starts messing with all his stuff. And he's like, go away. Like he's like, I have a purpose here. I need to find this guy. But through like him just kind of interacting with Yoda, eventually it comes out like, it was kind of a test to see if Luke was made of the stuff, the type of character that he needed to have for Yoda to teach him. Because he's like, I'm not going to make the same mistake I made with your father, which he didn't tell him.
Right.
But he's like, I don't want the same thing happen to you, what happened to your father, that Vader killed him.
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. And so, what is Princess Leia's goal? Her goal is in this movie was survival and getting away.
But also coordinating the resistance efforts,
But
the rebel efforts.
She's also trying to win a rebellion. I mean, she's a leader, but that doesn't happen as much in this particular movie because she's just basically running for her life.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what to do and
trying not to get hit on by Han Solo.
All right. Well, and that's a whole nother issue because when I was a kid, we all thought, I mean, the movie poster, the original movie poster was all hanging
Luke's
off of Luke Skywalker. And we all thought it was Luke and Leia were going to be. Yeah, it's right here. By the way, we're recording this while we have some of Steven's Folletti's beautiful Star Wars glasses.
Beer glasses.
I have the Star Wars movie, the original New Hope
movie poster,
which is the fantasy-looking painting, the original.
And I've got the Empire Strikes Back.
He's got the Empire,
which is the fantasy-looking one with the original.
So amazing.
Yeah.
So all that to say is, in this movie, again, they make it primal, even though her character is the same, but they make it more complex in the sense that they throw something in there that was kind of hinted at in Star Wars and New Hope. Because, I don't know whether they did it on purpose. I don't think he did, actually. I think he had 2 and 3 or whatever, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
He wrote those 2 after realizing, I can make more movies.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of set up a little bit of a kind of a love triangle there where Han is like, hey, maybe she and I can, what do you think? Me and a princess? And Luke's like, no way, man. Because, Luke kisses her twice. Like they kiss twice, I remember being a kid like, they're going to get together.
For sure, yeah.
So they throw that wrench in the whole works.
Yeah.
And they deal with that issue and theme within the first 30 seconds or something where they're in the hallway and he's like, oh, come on, you just tell me how much you love me or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but again, like it's such great writing because it comes back later when he's going to get frozen in carbonite and she does tell him.
Yes, I love you.
I love you. And he says the famous, I know.
I know. Yes.
And so, as writers,
which is such, can we just pause on that dialogue right there for a second? Like, this is such great writing because the whole time, Han Solo is, for the first 2/3 of the movie, he is just hounding and hounding and hounding on her. Like, I know you like me, just admit it. Stop running away, admit your feelings. And he's like cornering her, and he gets a kiss, and then C-3PO interrupts it, and she takes that opportunity to kind of bolt, and so there's no follow up to it. And so the whole time he's just like, look, I know, you don't even know that I know that you know, and you don't know, kind of thing. And so then finally, just as he's about to get frozen in carbonite, which he might not survive, she comes out with, I love you.
Yeah.
And he just calmly goes, I know.
And the classic legendary story about that scene is originally in the script.
He's supposed to say, I love you.
He was supposed to say, I love you back. I love you too.
Yeah.
And supposedly Harrison Ford said, he would never say this.
Right.
And he goes to the director and he goes, he would never say this.
Yeah.
He would say, I know. He wouldn't say, I love you back.
Right.
And the director goes, go for it, And so we go back a little bit. So we've gone over the goals and how, and again, for the goals, for Darth Vader's goals, Han Solo's goals, they all come together at the end because Han Solo is running from the bounty hunters. Well, who catches up to him in the end? The bounty hunters, but also Darth Vader catches up to him. So this whole, for Star Wars through Empire Strikes Back, he's been the scoundrel that's been running from people, the law. He's been running from everybody, just trying to survive, just trying to hustle and make it work. And everything finally catches up to him, which is such good character writing.
Right.
Okay, now everything does catch up to him.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen?
In the moment that he thinks he's safe, because he goes to his old friend's system that's supposed to be like way off the grid. He's like, yeah, the Empire shouldn't be here. You know, I know we go way back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, I got the Millennium Falcon from him, but he probably forgot about that by now.
We know this. He doesn't like the Empire. We can trust him.
Yeah, exactly. And then within that whole scene of like the betrayal between and it's not so much even a betrayal, it's a forced of hand. Because like Lando Calrissian just gets put in a situation where he is just powerless.
Yeah.
The Empire showed up right before he gets contacted by Han, and he kind of does have his guys try and, you know, like send him away, but eventually he has to receive him, and in that time he's like, okay, I've made a deal where at least I can save everyone else.
Right.
And all I have to give up is Han to this bounty hunter. And then the deal keeps changing. Pray I don't alter the deal further.
Well, and here's a good example again of complexity versus complication is they didn't add in Lando Calrissian just to, let's say, add a black character.
Right.
Although I think he realized how he needed to make the cast a little bit more diverse.
Yeah.
And that's what he said. And that's why he, you know, but Lando Calrissian has a role. Like they don't just bring in a new character for no reason. They bring in a new character. Now he has a role to move the story forward.
Yeah.
Which is he going to help them, or is he going to, like, what's his deal?
Right.
And he ends up becoming this part of the
resistance,
the way that all this stuff catches up. So Lando is from Han's past, which is part of the complexity again. It's part of the same it's complex, it's deeper for Han's character that his past is catching up to him.
Yes.
Again, and that's the whole point of his character in the movie. That's his whole arc, is that his past is finally catching up to him. And they established that. It's such good, it's simple.
Yes.
But when they wrote it, when they had the idea,
but it's what hinges everyone else's character development on, because Luke sees it while he's training with Yoda, and Yoda's like, "Don't go. If you go, you're going to undo everything your friends have been fighting for."
That's right.
And Luke is like, "I have to go help them. I cannot just sit by and whatever's about to happen to them." And so Luke ends up there. And the whole purpose for him to end up there is because Vader set it up as a trap for him to be there. So everything about like Han's past catching up to him is also the very mechanism that is being used to capture in Luke's storyline and Vader's storyline, Bounty Hunter storyline.
Yeah, and here's one of the main reasons I have grown to love Empire Strikes Back even more over the years. Because Yoda, well, number one, because I'm getting older and old people are always right.
Of course.
Yes. Right? But Yoda tells him, don't go. Obi-Wan tells him, don't go. You will fall to the dark side.
Yeah.
He will win. This is not how you're going to win. Right? They keep telling him you're not ready. And he says, I have to go save my friends. And nothing Luke does changes anything that happens with his friends.
Nope.
He doesn't save anyone. The opposite happens. That's such good writing.
Yeah.
Is that what ends up happening is Lando and now Princess Leia, they save him. His friends have to save him.
Yes.
And that's such good character development and writing for him, where he realizes, where he has to realize that he wasn't ready. And he has to realize that Yoda was right. Obi-Wan was right. I wasn't ready. There was so much I didn't know yet. I didn't know he was my father. I didn't know how strong he was. I didn't know the power of the dark side, which he has to deal with all over again in Return of the Jedi in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think it's well done in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it's an escalated way.
It's an escalated way, and it's a developing way. It takes Luke's arc all the way to realizing it's not about adventure. It's not about vengeance. It's not about action. Because
it's about balance.
Because that's the struggle that Yoda has with him. I can't teach him, it's not about adventure. It's not about not being afraid. You're gonna be afraid.
Yeah.
Now, what are you gonna do when you're afraid? And so Luke has to learn that. And so in order for his character to grow, he had to give in to that part of his character to realize, oh, this is actually a failure of mine.
Yeah.
And so it's just such a beautifully done movie. And let me just say that Star Wars was written and directed by Lucas. And it's a great movie.
Yeah.
But I think he did something borderline genius again when he went to Empire Strikes Back. He did not write the script. Lawrence Kasdan wrote the script, and he's the same guy who wrote the script for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Guy is like top notch.
Yeah.
He brought in Irvin Kershner.
So Spielberg wasn't involved in. I thought he started getting involved. Was he getting involved in Return of the Jedi?
No, Lucas wanted Spielberg to direct Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Now think about that.
Yeah.
It was going to have Lawrence Kasdan again.
Yeah.
As the script writer. And
Spielberg.
And then Spielberg directed, but the Directors Guild were still boycotting Lucas.
Oh, wow.
Because I don't know if you know about all this, but the Directors Guild after Star Wars told Lucas, like, we're going to kick you out of the Directors Guild and we're going to boycott you because they had a rule that you had to put the credits at the beginning.
Oh,
and he says, no, I won't do that.
Yeah.
And because it was his movie and it was his, like, he started a whole company, a whole film company for Star Wars. Like, he said, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Irvin Kershner was George Lucas's mentor and teacher as a director. But Irvin Kershner was not a science fiction guy. He was not even an action adventure guy. He was a drama guy. And that's why the characters work.
Makes sense.
That's why the action was going to be awesome.
Yes.
Right? Because Lucas and the special effects team, and they were going to make sure that was really cool. And they would make sure it was going to look great. But Irvin Kershner came in and, like, he made Luke make sense. He made Yoda make sense.
Yeah.
And again, Yoda isn't just an added extra character for no reason. Like, he's got a purpose to be there.
Yeah. The whole scene on Dagobah was, what I love about it is it's not just a montage.
You said that the other day.
Yeah.
And I thought that is a great point because the 80s were great with montages and training.
Yes. It was not a training montage. They actually developed into that scenario, that scene, that, you had at least 5 or 6 different scenes where you cut to, other people's action, you come back to Luke and Yoda, and they've gotten a little bit further from where they were before. And, there's Luke, going off into the woods by himself, and Yoda's like, you're not ready yet, don't do that,
it's dark in there. You're not going to need your weapons. Weapons won't do you any good in there.
Yeah. And then...
Which, by the way, just as an aside, which again is complex because what is Luke's fatal flaw is that he thinks it's about adventure and action.
Yeah.
And so he takes in his weapons and he expects to use his weapons and he expects his weapons. And Yoda's like, weapons will not help you here.
Yeah.
And again, it's what does he have to learn? What does he have to learn? And what does he do in Return of the Jedi when he goes to face Darth Vader? He gives up his lightsaber.
Yes.
He has no weapons.
Yeah. Yes.
And he's I'm just going to face you. I'm here for your redemption. I'm not here for action.
Yeah.
I'm not here for vengeance. I'm not here for pain.
Which I think is a reflection of Vader's interaction with Luke in Empire Strikes Back, because he is going with the intent to turn him, not to kill him.
Right.
And so when he gets there, like, yes, he does kind of, he fights him because he wants to see, like, where are you at?
Yeah, exactly.
And how far have you come along? How strong are you?
Yeah.
And then as he's realizing, he's like, impressive, most impressive. And then he starts thinking a little more, and it comes out. He's like, you could join me, and you and I, we could overthrow the Emperor. We could rule the galaxy as father and son. Like, come and be a part of, like, this is your heritage. This is your destiny.
Right.
And so Vader almost, he steps out, as Sith do, into the realm of, hey, you know what? I think if it's as my apprentice, we can take out my master, and then we can be free to rule however we want. And so that like also saves Luke in the whole situation, because Vader's not just trying to kill him, which he could have easily. We saw him force choke at least 4 people.
Oh, sure.
He could have easily just said, yes, your lightsaber skills, you've been practicing, but try this on for size.
Yeah, right.
And just force choked him and been done with it. But his purpose was to turn Luke.
That's right.
And then he started getting the idea, like, we could be a team. We could be a thing.
Absolutely. And again, as a kid, that's why it was such an amazing moment, because as a kid, you're just thinking he's the bad guy. He wants to hurt the good guy.
Yeah.
And the good guy has to fight the bad guy. But then when you start throwing in these dynamics and this depth to these characters, like Darth Vader isn't just chasing people because he's the bad guy. Like, his whole goal is he loves his son and he wants his son.
Yeah.
And he's even going to argue with his master and the emperor and go, well, maybe we don't have to kill him. And it makes him gives depth to that villain.
Yeah.
That, again, we don't see the redemption until Return of the Jedi, but it makes us go, oh, well, maybe he's not just pure evil.
Right.
Maybe he's got his own motivations, and it makes us love that character.
Yeah.
So even as a villain, even if we go, no, he's got to lose. I mean, like, we got to beat him.
Right.
We got to still beat the Empire, but it humanizes these characters.
Yeah.
And it really is one of those movies. It's probably one of the top 10 movies ever made. Like,
right.
I'm really putting that out there, because I'm saying, like, when they did the top 100 movies of all time, I think Empire Strikes Back was in the top 10.
Cleared the top. Yeah.
It was in the top 10. It was up there with, like, Gone with the Wind and everything.
Nice.
Because people recognize, like, it was higher than Star Wars.
Yeah.
People recognize, like, that movie is so well made, and it wasn't just because there were lasers and the lightsaber battle was so much better than Star Wars. It was so incredible.
Yeah.
Because you had a young guy who could really dance around Darth Vader and make it look kind of flashy.
Yep. Doing flips and going up.
But there was also a lot more. There was a lot more tension. But there's a lot more tension in the situation, because Luke's there for his friends. Darth Vader is there to try to capture this kid.
Yeah.
Who we think, he killed his dad, but whatever.
Yeah.
But there's you killed my father, and like, oh, I killed his dad. Like, you think there's this tension, and then that's why the turn is so amazing. That twist where it's like, no, I'm actually your dad.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview recently with Mark Hamill, where that was the biggest secret ever.
Right. They didn't even know.
And they shot the scene.
Yeah.
With David Prowse or whoever was
the guy who was
in the suit, where he said what he said when they filmed it was, no, Obi-Wan killed your father. That's what he said when they filmed it.
Yeah.
And Luke was supposed to react to that horrifying idea. Oh, my mentor, this guy I love, this guy.
That's impossible.
Like, that's impossible. Like, that's what he was reacting to. And they pulled him aside later and said, George knows, and the director knows, and now you know what he actually is saying. This is the actual page of the script. Like, they switched out the page of the script.
Yeah.
This is the actual, and he was like, this is a joke, right? Like, I mean, like, even Mark Hamill was like, there is no way this is true.
Right.
Like, he was like, well, even he was like, Darth Vader's lying. He's the villain. Like, obviously he's lying.
That can't be true.
And so it was such a huge twist and so well protected. And back then it was easier to protect certain things because there wasn't the internet and 18
leaks.
trailers before the actual trailer.
Yeah.
And then another 18 trailers. And then all those, spoilers that happen with a movie. And some movies still do a good job
of
protecting,
locked down.
But all that to say is, Empire Strikes Back, well made, well directed, and it's one of those movies that goes to show like it can be a good movie and a good story, even though like the science fiction is just the genre.
Yeah.
Or the fantasy science fiction is just the genre.
Yeah.
But what makes it the kind of movie that people still want to go to it after 40 years, even their kids love these movies and sing along.
Mm-hmm.
What makes that work, even though a lot of fans may not understand this is why, but is that character development, is the story, is the simplicity of the goals, and then the escalation
and the
where they bring all these goals into alignment and to consequence and resolution at the end. And of course, Empire was one of those amazing movies. Like, I can't even think of another movie where they just went, all right, we're just going to stop it here.
Right.
Han Solo's gone.
Yeah. Luke lost a hand.
They failed.
Yeah, they failed. Well, okay.
Next.
See you next time.
I will tell you one that's the only other one I can think of is Infinity War did it.
Yes.
At the end of Infinity War, where he wins, Thanos wins.
Yeah.
That's the only other movie I can think of where we sat in the theater and went, it can't be over.
Yeah, and that took,
that can't be the end.
35 years after
right?
Empire.
And you're like, I remember being in theater with my kids with Infinity War.
Yeah.
And my kids and everyone in the theater went, what the heck?
I remember having
freaking out.
A huge grin on my face because I knew what they had just done. And I was like, yes, that is such a great way to do this. And I know it's going to piss off so many people, but that's just because like it just ups the stakes so much. It ups
the stakes. And now who's not going to go see that movie?
Right. Yeah.
Because you're like, well, they got to get these guys back, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to leave it like this, right? I mean, and that's how we felt with Empire Strikes Back. Well, he's alive and he's frozen in carbonite and he's about to go, and they're going to go get him, but I'm going to have to wait till the next movie for this, and it's just so well done.
And to go back to the training moment with Yoda, they do enough to show you like, no, Luke is getting this. He is trainable. He's teachable. He's got the capability, but also there is such another level. So like he's standing there on one hand, balancing Yoda on his feet, lifting rocks with his mind, lifting up, R2-D2, and then he gets a little distracted because the X-Wing sinks down lower, and so he fails, and then Yoda's like, you can lift that too, and he starts, like, Luke starts doing it, but then he kind of doubts himself and fails, and then Yoda just comes and he's like, judge me by my size, do you? He's like, it's the same thing. Those rocks you were lifting, it's the same as the X-Wing. It's all the Force. The Force doesn't go by size of things. And then Yoda just easily lifts the X-Wing out, and which I leaned over to your son during the movie while we were watching, as I was like, Luke's like, you could do that the whole time? You didn't pull that out way back?
Well, what's amazing about those training scenes, and you're right, there's only one movie.
Yeah.
And I don't, and I really wonder how much they took from Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
There's only one other movie where I can think the training scenes were as good.
Yes.
Karate Kid.
Oh, Karate Kid. Okay.
That's the only movie I can think of where they didn't do a montage. Every training scene was a character building moment for both people.
And then a lot of what they were training ends up showing up again.
Yeah.
In the end.
But for Luke and in Empire Strikes Back, every training scene, Luke fails. There's a failure at some point in that scene.
Yeah.
And again, that's complexity, because at the end of the movie, he doesn't win. He fails.
Yeah.
And they keep setting you up. He's
Yep.
going to fail. He's going to fail. Just watch him.
Yeah.
And you think, and you're a kid and you're watching this movie and you know story and you're like, well, he'll figure out a way to win in the end, because
Right.
it's an action movie and action heroes. He's the hero. He's the guy with the lightsaber and he's Luke Skywalker. He's going to win.
Yeah.
And yet it's genius. Lucas is like, even though he didn't write the script, but he was in charge of the story.
Right.
And he keeps asking Yoda these questions, and Yoda goes, look, you just gonna have to shut up now. Just trust me. Like,
Yeah.
he's not trusting his master. His questions don't really get to the heart of the issue.
Right.
Like he goes into the cave and he realizes the whole symbolism is he's going to end up, he's Darth Vader,
Yeah.
and he's not the hero.
You're right.
Maybe he's not the hero. I mean, like all of those scenes they show the same thing. He's going to fail.
Yeah.
He's a failure. Even though he's good,
Right.
like he actually
His motivation is good.
he beats Darth Vader in the cave.
Yeah.
Like think
Right.
about that. Like he actually wins the
Yeah.
fight, but he loses his soul.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
That's what that scene is saying. But they're showing it to you, and they're saying this is his struggle in the whole from day one.
Is
this
he going
his
to
struggle.
be a reflection of his father?
Is he going to be this? But of course we don't realize, right? Like you're
But
saying,
they tell you in the same movie.
they tell
They
you
tell
in
you
the same movie,
I am your father, and then you go, oh my goodness, he is on the same path.
He is
if
on
he
the-
doesn't take heed to all the warnings.
That's right.
And yeah, so we could talk hours on this
Oh, yeah.
because it's such a great movie. I have two fun extracurricular things for
Okay.
Star Wars. I don't
All
know
right.
if you have any, but two things that I love and I go back to. So there was a song put together by this guy years ago, right before I think the second prequel came out. This guy, Corey Vidal, made this song called Star Wars John Williams is the Man. And it's an a cappella tribute to all these different melodies that John Williams did, but all sung about the Star Wars universe. So you get Star Wars theme song, you get the Jaws theme song, you get the Superman theme song, you get the Jurassic Park theme song, and it's all about Star Wars. It's with interlaid within the lyrics, and it's just great. If you haven't heard it,
Nice.
I would look it up and watch that. And then the other thing I would watch that ties in a lot to Empire Strike Back is this other YouTube channel called Bad Lip Reader.
Oh
Yes.
my God, that's
Bad lip reading of The Empire Strikes Back. Seagulls, stop that now. And it's just very funny to watch.
It's amazing. I don't know if it's the same guys, but somebody did something similar with like an old Jesus movie.
Oh,
And I don't know if you've seen that one.
the
But
one where
he goes, "What in the name of me is happening?"
look at all these sinners.
But no, that's fine. I thought you were going to go with Weird Al.
Oh my goodness, that too.
His-
Weird Al, The Saga Begins. If you don't know, it's his parody on
American Pie.
but sung about episode 1. I sing that all the time too. And and if you,
Micah
if,
loves that.
If we want to talk about another genius, we
absolutely.
may have to do an episode
We
on
might-
Weird Al.
We might have to do one on UHF.
Yeah,
we might have to do one on
UHF, so that we can just talk about the
Oh my
genius
gosh.
of Weird Al.
Yeah.
Because the way that he tells the story and the plot of that first episode 1 Star Wars through
A song.
parody
Yeah.
of another song, he does such a great job.
I saw an interview with him recently.
Yeah.
There was an interview with him on the Blu-ray, because I got the Blu-ray of UHF and we watched
Okay,
it.
yeah.
And there was an interview with him, and the guy was asking him about that.
Yeah.
It was, I forget what it was
The
called.
Saga Begins.
The Saga Begins.
Yeah.
And he goes because the guy was asking him like, how many times do you have to watch the movie? He goes, oh, I wrote that before watching the movie.
What?
And the guy was like, no, you didn't. And he goes, no, I just saw the trailer a few times and I read up on some spoilers and I figured out what the story was going to be about. And he goes, it's not that hard. It's Star Wars. Like, I knew what it was going to be about. And he, like, I don't know how he could do that, but because it's so right. He goes, now I watched the movie before we put it on the album. Mm-hmm. He said, because just in case, like, it was in line with what actually happened in the movie.
In the Jedi, I admired Mose, met up with Darth Maul, and now he's toast. I'm still here, and he's a ghost. I guess I'll train this boy.
It's amazing. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, again, Steven is right. We could talk about Star Wars in general, but also just even about Empire Strikes Back. We're not going to go through every scene. Yeah. But just as writers, it's great, I think, to look at some of these classic movies and great, really well done things and say, what can we learn from them? Yeah. And what did they do right? Because I think a lot of times writers need to learn how to do that more. And that's why we do some of these Interbrews, is so that we can encourage writers to look at some of these movies or books. And we haven't done as many
on
books.
A deeper level than just appreciation.
Yeah, they're just saying they did a great job, but also to look at it as writers and say, what are some things we need to learn how to do better? So I appreciate you guys. And again, like, subscribe, share. Go to our Patreon page and get some swag.
Give suggestions. What movies do you want us to interbrew about?
Or even a classic movie. Like, is there a classic movie you'd like us to talk about?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great ones out there.
Because, there's a new Dune movie or TV series coming out.
It might be a miniseries.
There's a miniseries coming out.
There's a new Dune coming out.
I have not delved into that, but I heard a little bit. I know enough about the world that it's like, that's one of those stories.
Yeah. The book is
unique on its own.
The original book.
Yeah.
It's like classic science fiction fantasy. Like, everyone should read it if you're into science fiction or fantasy. And the first movie was good. Yeah. They did another like mini series years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And it was like Sci-Fi Channel did it. It was cheesy. Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to this version and to see what they do with it.
You must make a water choice.
Oh my gosh.
If you don't want to, I can make it for you.
The book, seriously, Dune is... It's so amazing. And the two sequels, I've read the two sequels, and they're good, but they're not.
They're not the same.
It's not this. It's a different. It's way more philosophical, and you got some of that in the original Dune. Anyway, all that to say is
more complicated than it is complex.
No, it wasn't as complicated. It was just a lot more exposition. Yeah, how about that?
Oh, so very much like Speaker for the Dead versus Ender's Game.
No, I like Speaker for the Dead a whole lot.
Speaker for the Dead was good, but it like.
But no, it was more just It was like that, but
that should be our next
not
Interbrew.
As good.
That should be our next Interbrew.
Ender's Game.
Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, like that
first trilogy.
Yeah,
we should
talk about that.
So good.
Well, until next time, everybody.
Until next time.
Raise that glass to inspiration. And stay inspired, guys.
Stay inspired, guys.